Poker Distilled is a podcast about psychology, philosophy, poker, and life. It's a place where poker coach and poker player come together to talk openly and honestly about whatever comes to mind. Poker Distilled is our safe space to vent, explore, rant, and dream, and we hope our conversations will benefit you, the listener, as much as they benefit us. If you enjoy this podcast, please take a minute to share it today with just one friend. It means the world to us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the long-awaited, not quite the return, this is not season 3 of Poker Distilled, but this is a little catch-up. We are approaching our 1-year anniversary, and so Melissa and I decided they would hang out for an hour or two, catch up, see what is new with her, see what's new with me in Carrot Corner, and yeah, give you guys a little bit of a tantalizing taste of what season 3 might look like, and your long-awaited fix of Poker Distilled. So how is it going, my friend? I've not seen you for quite some time. What's new?
I know. It's going well. It's going well. Yeah, lots of things are new. I feel like we haven't. So the last time we talked was our last episode was December of 23. It is now April of 24. It feels longer than that, but I think that's because I don't know, maybe because we both have a lot going on in our lives, but yeah, I've missed doing this. I really have enjoyed our last year. I think our official year anniversary was March of 24, so we're a little bit ahead of it, but yeah, I really enjoyed our first 2 seasons of Poker Distilled. I think it was really useful for me and really helpful for me in my continued kind of development as a poker player. And what's been really nice is I've had like a lot of great feedback from my local poker community. A lot of the players that I see pretty regularly have started listening to it, and I get a lot of nice compliments. People say a lot of nice things, and I think what's really cool is I think people relate to it. Really, they relate to it in a way that maybe is different than how they relate to other poker content out there. So we're not a technical poker podcast where we're going through like a hand in like minute detail. There's loads of other content on CPS that's both free and part of the school, or like the upcoming new subscription service that has all that. This is different. This has its own like unique space, and I think people like that. They relate to it. They relate to kind of hearing my story of grinding out in the 1-2-2-5 streets and the ups and downs of that. And I think they also like hearing kind of about maybe hearing and seeing another side of you, different than maybe just like the weekly video drops on YouTube.
Yeah, I think the more YouTube you do, the more of your humanity you lose, and the more you start to like become the version of yourself that's like somewhat of a caricature, right? So like when I'm doing YouTube and I'm like, you don't deserve to play the game, and I'm like, true EV, and I'm doing all this stuff, like, yeah, sure, the audience likes it, it's dopamine, the editor messes around with it, you have a bit of fun, and the algorithm promotes your stuff the more you do that, and it's been working. But there comes a point as well where like the version of you that you're portraying to the world, I think, starts to become like someone that you could dislike through lack of being genuine. And while I do try to be as genuine as possible in YouTube, like when I'm talking about poker and I'm talking about the technical side of it, because I am throwing in like a bunch of entertainment stuff and gimmicky stuff, and I'm buying into this personality that I've created for myself, which is me, but it's like one extreme, it's one end of the spectrum of my personality, if that makes sense. I think it's also good to be able to have this space, and I found Poker Distilled massively helpful, almost therapeutic last year, because it's a place where we can both just hang out, chat openly and honestly. We've always had this sort of dynamic in our friendship where we're very open, and that's the kind of, thing I really value. I value honesty and openness like above all else in people, and so being able to just like say what comes to mind, knowing you're not going to be judged harshly, and I think it's just always been great. So I'm looking forward to season 3 when we start that. The subscription service is busy. I'm busy behind the scenes. My tech guy's off sick. We're a couple of weeks away from launch. We've got a lot going on, so I didn't want to start it quite yet. But I do think things will settle down a little bit, and I'll have more time actually later in the year for both myself and for Poker Distilled, and hopefully also for playing a bit more poker as well. So looking forward
Nice.
to all of that. So
Cool.
shall we chat a bit about what's changed for you poker wise? Because I think the audience loves
Sure.
following your journey. If you haven't seen seasons 1 and 2, by the way, guys, of Poker Distilled, as Melissa says, it's a very different flavor. You're not going to get like intense technical breakdowns in this podcast. You're just going to get two friends chatting about the game and the stuff around poker, the paraphernalia of poker. So last time we spoke, you were taking the occasional trip through to Vegas. You were playing some 2-5 and 5-10 games
Mhm.
there. And you said something quite interesting before we hit record there, which was that 1-2 is actually feeling less like something you want to do, like less like something you want to have as a cornerstone of your poker life now. And you've been enjoying playing in like some tougher lineups in Vegas. So talk to us about that shift that's happened where being in the soft, juicy game where no one knows what they're doing isn't really scratching much of an itch, right? So talk to us about that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So I think my approach to poker is maybe a little bit atypical for how people approach it. Like I don't do it for a living. I've when I started playing it, I started playing it because I found it incredibly challenging, but also incredibly interesting. So the same way that I would approach any uh any hobby or anything that I did in my life that was going to take a lot of time and energy, I wanted to get good at it. And I realized as I kind of get older and I don't know, go through like I learn more about myself, I realize that I'm the kind of person that like I don't really go halfway on anything, and like everything I do is like I bring like 100% to, because if I don't, then it's not worth doing and I don't spend any time doing it and it just falls off my radar. Um, and so I think the way I approach poker is like I want to be in like really challenging games against really good players, because I want to play against people who I feel like I respect them as players. And what I mean by that, I feel like I respect the fact that their play shows that they've put in work in off the tables into the game, whether that's learning the theory or whether that's uh studying certain exploits or utilizing certain exploits. So I kind of live by the maxim, like if you're the best player on the team, you want to be on a different team. Like you don't want to be the best person in your world, because that is a recipe for stunting your growth. It's a recipe for stagnation. It's a recipe for withering away and slowly dying, and realize like waking up one day and being like, I'm 60 years old and what have I done with my life? I don't know. That's a little dramatic, but that's what goes through my head. That's how I think about things. Like life's like life's too short to be the best at anything, right? Like you always want to be kind of good, or like kind of getting to the point where you're the best. Like you want to be on like level 7 of a 10 level game, because it's like once you we've had this discussion before on earlier episodes, but this idea of like once you reach the top of the mountain, like you feel like you don't feel elation. Maybe you do for a minute, but then it's followed quickly by a certain depression, because you're just like, oh my God, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's the next mountain kind of thing. Anyways, all that's a long way of saying that the way I approach poker is I do like the soft, juicy games. I'm not going to say no to those games if they're around, but generally, the 1-2 games and the 2-5 games to me feel incredibly normal. They just feel like full of normies in a way that like, they may think they're, from an outsider perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, like this person's playing every hand, what a whale, whatever. That feels really normal to me, and it feels really uninteresting.
Yep.
And I don't want to sound snobby any more than I already do, maybe, but I also feel like I just want to be honest. and and so I feel like with the lower stakes games, I will always play those. I guess it's just the reality of where I live and what's the games that are available. But in terms of where I allocate my resources, where I allocate my time, um, I have definitely shifted to like putting more of that to like the 5-10 games. So going to Vegas for 3 or 4 days, trying to stay somewhere pretty cheap, being really frugal with uh, you know, my meals and things like that, and trying my best to treat it like I would a business trip or something like that, where you're in business for yourself and, maybe you're like on the road. I don't know, but it's kind of like that. And so I can devote all of as many resources as possible to poker and as much time and mental energy uh, to poker and really just take advantage of what's available and take advantage of the fact that like I'm young and like healthy and I can go do this. And I find it really satisfying. And also, if I lose, sometimes I feel like, okay, well, like that's like it feels a little more in a weird way. It doesn't feel satisfying, but it feels better than than losing in like a super shitty low stakes game. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I will say that the game, like the 5-10 scene that I've experienced in Vegas is like actually quite small in terms of like I see the same players, they see me. Um, I don't play everywhere. I only play at, a handful of casinos, but it definitely feels like there's a big difference in skill and the approach to the game, the way that the level of the amount of regs, but also the way that people approach it. There's more money on the table. There's more to lose. There's more risk. And frankly, it's more exciting for me.
Yeah, it's weird because like all the other disciplines are competitive. There's just not this thing where you have to smash people who are way worse than you, like really, really badly, to the point that you can overcome some handicap and win, even though you have that handicap, right? Okay, you can say that like that system exists in golf and handicap events where like you have to like play your best in order to beat people who are playing not quite their best, even though you're like different levels or something like that. But most games, when you dedicate yourself to them, like let's say you become really proficient at karate or judo or some martial art, or maybe it's like a team sport like basketball or soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. Imagine like playing basketball in like a NBA, level team and playing against some like amateur
Hmm.
team that with people who don't really know how to play basketball well and have never really
Hmm.
taken it that seriously, and the score is like
Hmm.
125-4, and you're like,
Hmm.
well, what was the point in that? That just doesn't exist in other disciplines. But in a game like 1-2, I'd imagine like as a studied player, when you sit in the 1-2 game, it's not really that dissimilar from like I don't know, a purple belt at jiu-jitsu like fighting a bunch of white belts, like one after the other,
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. It's probably like on similar lines, or like running a race with like a ball and chain tied around your ankle and a big battle old knight steel helmet on your head that you can barely see out of, and you're running against really slow people, but like, hey, you've got ball and chain and a big steel helmet on, and like that's going to slow you down.
Yeah.
You have to win anyway. It's something like that, and I don't think there's a whole lot of sense of progress in that. I don't think that's a satisfying thing, to try and beat people so badly that you still survive some kind of tax. I don't think that's a very gratifying thing to do, but that is the reality of poker. And there'll be people out there listening to this that are just like, that's poker, man. Yeah, you're in the wrong fucking
Yeah.
game then. That's fucking life, bro.
Yeah.
And they'll probably say bro
Yeah.
like at the end of their sentences, those people. And
Sure.
to them, I say, don't call me bro. But also, like, that's just soulless to me. Like, I get it. To make a living from poker, you do need to accept soft games. You need to say yes, please to them, and you do need to sit down with fish, and you do need to like win as much as possible from those people. It needs to be part of the game. But to only do that, to choose to only
Hmm.
do that, to never challenge yourself against better players and tougher lineups, not only is that going to stunt your development, like you said, it's kind of like the stagnation recipe, but also it's going to kind of eat away at your soul because you're going to become complacent and you're going to become bored and jaded. And there just isn't much honor in that because humans are like hierarchical by nature, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And we always want to ascend to the top
Yeah.
of whatever hierarchy we involve ourselves in. So if we decide to become a tennis player, we'll want to win our tennis matches and get better. And we'll want to be in a tennis team that's in a higher division than last year and stuff like that. And that sense of
Yeah.
progress, like, is hugely important. Like, we're really motivated by that. It's like, why do computer gamers love gaming? Because they like build up their character in an RPG, or they get through the levels of a game to complete it. That kind of thing. They grow more and more powerful, and that's incredibly satisfying. It just ticks a load of boxes and, rewards our dopamine systems and all of that. So of course you should feel motivated to play the 510 game wherever possible because it's the next rung up on the ladder and you're an ambitious person. And I don't think that makes you some kind of like masochist or something like that because you want to like
No.
surround yourself with stronger players. I think it's just that you're not the grinder that's needing to win to survive. You don't have to be putting yourself in the most profitable games all the time to survive. You don't have to game select to that extent. So why not challenge yourself? Because I bet you in like a year or two from now, you'll be such a better player by subjecting yourself to like a 510 Bellagio lineup than you will by like going downtown and playing 1-2 at, I don't know, the
Yeah.
Golden Nugget. That's the casino that stands out to me because someone recommended that I play at the Golden Nugget when I first landed in
They have an
Vegas.
enormous, like, their 1-2 game I think is like uncapped, and it's
Right.
just, from what I hear, it's just enormous. It plays ridiculous,
So
but
that's probably not a bad game.
yeah.
Like that's probably okay, but then it'll attract the regs eventually as well. Like nowhere's gonna
Yeah.
stay like fully fish filled forever. The regs are gonna
Right.
come where the recreational players
Right.
go. Right.
And I think like, I guess I'm just being honest in terms of what gets me, where I find enjoyment in poker. So where I find enjoyment is different than maybe where I find profit,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
And I guess like that's one of the reasons I really like playing heads up, and maybe I can talk about that in a little while because
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing a lot more. But um, like, and I've been playing a lot more against players that are better than me, and I find that satisfying because I guess I feel like I want to get better by playing against better people. There's a person in my one of my regular rooms that I play in who is like a fairly solid 1-2 grinder. I don't think he might play for a living. I'm not sure, but regardless, he plays like he plays for a living. Um, and I remember like I we had like for a while, like there was like a 2-5 game running, and like a bunch of the regs like were playing in it, but he didn't. And I remember like feeling such contempt for him. I felt like I really did. I felt like here's someone that literally has like no ambition, like zero, like is totally fine with what's happening in like how he plays his world. And it just seemed like so small. And it seemed like the person that like stays home on the farm and just like
Hey, that's
never
me.
wants.
What are you talking about,
Well,
Melissa?
that's right. You stayed home on the family farm. But I'm just using it as a metaphor generally. I I will be clear. I am very easily could be wrong. I'm just talking about my personality type.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who never left my hometown who are probably way more successful than me.
Mm.
That, and by success, I don't just mean financially. I mean like happy
Mm-hmm.
families, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that that's never been my style and it's never been who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to like put on a different costume when I play poker to like, I'm not going to put on like the grinder costume because it's not me. I just won't. What I'll do is I will learn the grinder world and adapt and do it in a way that makes me happy and I find satisfying intellectually, and all the other things that the reasons I do anything. It's like, I don't read crappy books. I don't watch crappy movies. I don't listen to bad music. I don't hang out with boring people. I just like surround myself with things that I enjoy and that make me happy and that I find interesting. And I think the other thing I was thinking about the other day that I wanted to bring up today is I didn't realize how valuable my attention, like my own attention span is, or like what I choose to pay attention to is, because nowadays, like our attention spans are commodities. Like they're bought and sold. Like
Yeah.
what you look on at social media, basically through everything we do online is like is is taking our attention, commodifying it, and selling it back to us in some ways. And that's the reality of capitalism. This isn't like some kind of communist rant or something, but it is, I think, an important thing to realize is that like what you spend your time doing is so important, and who you spend your time with is so important. And like you shouldn't cheapen that. Like you shouldn't just give yourself away to the flashiest suitor, like you should be like incredibly protective of your own attention span and what you focus on.
Mm.
And so I look at it like I'm incredibly protective of my mindset when I play poker. And part of me achieving a certain kind of what I like to think is like a decent mental game is realizing that about myself and not staying in games that other people are like, oh, this is such a good game. And I'm just like, no, like I'm not having fun. Like, okay, fine, there's 2 or 3 whales here, whatever.
Hmm.
But like at this time, I may feel like playing this game at a different time, but right now I don't.
Yeah.
And being okay with that.
Yep.
You know?
And I think that rat race, like money is the ultimate good. It's like the currency of success, is a really dangerous, toxic ethos to have. There's a lot of people in poker who are so motivated by the grind, and I get it. Like, poker's hard, and if you don't have a big bankroll or it is your full-time job and you're playing like 1, 2, 2, 5 and you're trying to make a living, you're probably like a cornered animal in some sense. You don't really have that luxury to just go, I'm going to go and play this game that I might not be winning in, that's high variance and high stakes that I'm not rolling for. That's just like poker suicide, right? You just wouldn't want to do that. Sure. That's crazy. But at the same time, there are a lot of people in this industry that are so obsessed with EV that it almost becomes like, I don't know, you're just failing to see the forest for the trees, because like you could make a philosophical argument here, and I might digress a bit, but you could say something to the effect of, well, why is money good? You know, we've not done a Peterson impression. Well, what is it that's good about money, huh? Why is it good? Okay, so it can buy you stuff. Okay. So it can buy you stuff, and it's like, okay, well, it makes you feel secure. It makes you feel happier. It maybe brings you pleasure. If you go out for like a good meal, or you buy like a really nice bottle of wine or something like that. It can get you status. It can help you attract a mate. This is like the good stuff about resources, aka having dollars in your bank account, right? As far as I can tell. And it's like, well, those things are all intrinsic goods. Like those things like status. Okay, status you could say is like a little bit of a, it's maybe something humans weaponize to get survival, right? You could say that like if you have status, you have more chance of being accepted by the tribe, getting a good mate, reproducing, etc., etc. So maybe it's a little bit of a means to an end. But ultimately, the security, the being accepted by the tribe, the being able to reproduce and, you know, make sure your genes are passed down the genetic line, these are all like really intrinsic things as a human, right? They're just kind of innate, and you can't really reduce them to anything. It's just kind of our wiring, right? We're just kind of like slaves to our genetics in that sense. And all of the good that we therefore get, we don't really have a choice as to what that is. And it's certainly something that is much more immediate to us than money could ever be. So money will always play second fiddle to that. It's always going to be a means to an end, right? So if you remember that like success in life isn't actually just about how many tokens you have, but it's also about what you do with those tokens and what you do with your other commodities, like your attention span and your time, as you alluded to. I think that's a great point about attention span in the world of doom scrolling for 6 hours and then feeling like an absolute carcass of a human at the end of it. Like I've seen people doing that. It's a disease. It's like, it's not even, it's an addiction. It's not even that far away from like a drug addiction, honestly, or a gambling addiction, or like a really unhealthy addiction.
It's not.
But to finish this point then, if the good, the happiness, the currency of the good and the happiness is actually just something that's first order, automatic, innate, prioritizing EV, which is just the expected amount of tokens you're going to earn above all else, has to just be deeply flawed in some level. So I think what we really need to work on as humans is like, at what point do we say, okay, we have maximized enough EV or coins now that we don't actually want to do any more of that right now, but we want to actually like further some other good. And there's a lot of value in intellectual goods, especially those that are to do with progress and self-esteem and self-worth and your own little personal crusades against the world. I mean, it's just you and your little garden really for a short amount of time, and how far you get that garden to grow in your time is really all you can really do at the end of the day, right? And we zoom in on that and we live that, and to us that's our whole world, right? You were talking about people having their own little universe, their own world there. That guy whose world is like more confined than yours and isn't comfortable, you know, growing the garden as much. But at the end of the day, if we don't do things that water that garden and allow like personal flourishing, what are we actually doing? Like, I think the story of the rat race driven CEO that's miserable and has a heart attack at 53 is all too familiar in this day and age, and has been since, I don't know, whenever the productivity revolution happened in like the 60s or 70s or 80s, or probably 80s, 90s, whatever, but it's become more and more common, I think, since then. And I think in poker, there's just a lot of people who are so driven by money because it's a game about money that they place money before all these other goods to a point that's like really unhealthy. And I think that's more prevalent in poker. And some other areas, like I think like high flying lawyers, no offense, Melissa, but a lot of the people in that sort of line of work might be the same. A lot of people in business might be the same, really driven like surgeons or something like that, or they might be the same, like they're working their way up. And I think there's just always that risk. And I just hear that a lot, like on poker forums. I hear it a lot everywhere, that it's all EV and you got to do whatever you can for the EV, and the EV is God. And it's like, well, what about you? Like, who are you? Do you even know yourself? Like, what makes you happy? That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think like EV is a convenient, like it's a convenient like proxy for a lot of it represents a kind of singular pursuit, and it kind of simplifies things in a way that is false. So it's like, yes, the goal is to maximize EV, and everything you do needs to maximize EV, but like that doesn't tell you what happens when you are maximizing EV and you feel unsatisfied. So it in itself, it is insufficient as a philosophy, as a way of approaching the world. And like I can tell you that I've had sessions where I've maximized my EV, I've run above EV or whatever you want to call it, and I've left feeling fine. I mean, I'm not going to say that I felt crappy or I felt like down, but like it's not like I went off and like felt like there's this huge you know, wonderful happiness in my life. Like it just felt like, okay, that's good. Like it almost felt like that's what was supposed to happen. There was a kind of order to the world. There was a kind of like, I put a key in a lock and the door opened, and what was behind the door was what I expected to be there. For me personally, I'm not saying that's bad, and I don't want this to be misconstrued as me saying I have like some kind of you know, like I said, I'm not like some masochist or something. I'm not thinking that in a lot of ways, I mean, I'm just like every other poker player, but I will say that I've been thinking about it differently, and I've been thinking about it in terms of, you know, the EV of playing a game that maybe I'm not 100% rolled for, or with tougher players, I'm not sure if I can beat it, but I get a lot of benefit from playing with better players. I feel more satisfied with how I play. Maybe it makes me play better. I think a little bit harder about my decisions. I focus a little bit more on like the theoretical side. I'm not so willing to kind of just deviate into exploitation land, and you know, it forces me to kind of be a better player, and that to me has a benefit. And whether you call that EV or something else, it's a benefit that is in addition to what the EV would be if I, you know, in the normal course of the game. So it's going to be EV plus or something. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm saying. I just landed on my point.
Yeah.
Like I do normally do on this podcast, which is I go in a million different directions like a fish, and then eventually I land in the right spot. So it's like
Same.
I'm looking for that kind of EV plus. It's like I'm not sacrificing, I'm not just playing like an idiot. I'm not sacrificing EV. No, I want to um take the highest EV line, but I want something else. It's not enough. Always. It's not always enough. That's all.
Yeah. Because you can get something from a game that's largely about money that's not money. Like, just because poker is a game that's mostly about winning money, there's other stuff too that it can bring you. And I think that's the thing that gets missed a lot of the time in this community.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like one of those things where people say, oh, I got really good at poker and I brought those skills to the business world. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about getting good at poker and bringing those skills to poker, but having to produce something that is not theoretical EV. Like in like the theoretical sense. It's not something that you can like see in a solver. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it didn't have that, you could be doing anything. Another nice like reductio ad absurdum here is like, well, if poker didn't bring you stuff other than the money, then you would be equally happy to do some other discipline instead of poker. But yeah, that's not the case. Poker is easily the front runner. It's the thing you want to spend all your time on. Therefore, there has to be something else about poker that's really important. And therefore, maximizing that at the expense of your EV, your monetary EV, isn't actually like that absurd once you break it down that way, maybe. Okay, cool. So I think we've beaten this point to death probably. But yeah it's an interesting discussion.
I think that's, So, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, I can. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you've been up to? Because I know you've been super busy, and I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this have been seeing your YouTube videos talking about the subscription service. So how's that going?
Yeah, so the subscription service turned out to be like a massive thing, like a way bigger project behind the scenes than I thought it was going to be. When we last spoke, we'd launched the Carrot Corner platform where all the media was inbuilt into the website, and there were like access controls and layers of access that you had if you bought our different courses and stuff like that. We'd just finished like getting rid of like the downloadable course model and moving towards like just streamable via the website, like a proper video site. And I thought at the time that adding subscriptions to that wouldn't be that much work. It would be like a few plugins, it would be a few things to do, but actually it's been a hell of a job. There's been like loads of stuff breaking, loads of stuff behind the scenes, having to source like the right coaches, get them to produce content, organize it all, get the videos up there, get the thumbnails, get the thumbnail videos playing, just all the stuff that's like the technical ingredients of that. Our team has just been, it's a small team, and we've been like really, really busy with it, trying to get it all to look right and be right. And we are hoping to launch on April 22nd, so not long after this podcast comes out. So if nothing goes wrong, we'll be doing that. And I think it's going to be something really big. Like I think it's going to hopefully be something really special, because like the people that we've brought on to the teaching team, one, their content is mostly going to be structured. So while there are some one-off videos where like Alex Pinheiro, a high stakes guy, one of our high stakes guys, talks about, was this value bet too thin? Or like Sebastian talks about a roadmap for bluff catching the river. He's another high stakes guy. We're also going to have series, like Cruiser's going to come on, really strong, like international 200 Zoom pool player, professional poker player that has his own YouTube channel, High Elo Poker. We have a bunch of people from the Carrot stable, like a bunch of the senseis there, like Akshar and Ed coming on, and Jay Lu, who you obviously know quite well by this point. You've been battling heads up with. We'll talk about that a bit before the end as well. I want to touch on your exploits with Jay Lu and what you've learned from that, because the kid is a very intelligent guy and a very quick learner and good player in both chess and poker. This kid went from 1100. I used to smash this kid at chess a couple of years ago. Now he's like 2200 or something, like 2100. It's like mind-blowingly good, just like annihilate me now. So it's really great to see. But the people we've taken on for the subscription service, they're all proven professionals and winners. Like they have massive online graphs with big samples of them crushing. They have the ability to articulate. They're real teachers of the game. I've been extremely fussy, and I've rejected certain people and just said, you don't explain the game well enough, or you don't have the credentials we're looking for. And I'm not looking for people to have made like seven figures on Hand and Mob. I don't care about like the bottom line of how much you've won, because there's always the but how much did you lose argument to Hand and Mob, and I wonder how many people with big scores on there are actually losing players. But that aside, we are looking for people who do online poker, online cash game poker as a profession. These are the people we've taken on, the people that have sat and put in 600,000 hands in a year and battled and won six figures in some cases, or high five figures, or like made a living that way, which is really respectable and it's really hard. Sure. And we're taking on like true artisans of the cash game craft, but ones who are also able to teach. And when you think about other training sites, there are like really good coaches on other training sites too, but I don't think there's anywhere else where you just have like everything fully dedicated to like one format of the game, which is basically online six max cash games. Not that our content isn't useful for live players and stuff as well, like it will be, but yeah, we're like hyper specialized with people who have pitted themselves against, you know, the toughest environment, because anyone that can make a living, that can make a fiver, a good 5 or 6 figure living from online cash game poker in 2024 is a very, very strong player. And it's a few roads you can do that. You can do that via rakeback, and you can be a rakeback grinder. And that was like the path that JLu actually chose. Like when he was playing on Party back in the day, he was just grinding an absolute ton of volume, and he was playing well enough that after rakeback, he was winning like a lot of money. Or there's people who are more game selecty, or maybe more like going to play fewer tables and really focus and try and get a high organic win rate, like post rake, like rakeback not included. So there's like different ways of doing it, but whatever way you do it, like to make a living from online poker these days and to make a good living, it's super impressive. It really is. Sure. And that's why we're taking on people who are doing that or have done that. You know, there's no one that we're taking on that isn't a professional poker player coach. Like we're not taking on people that, for the most part, poker's just a little thing they do on the side or a hobby or anything like that. We're taking on like true professionals. So I'm super excited about the caliber of the content that's going to be coming out. I'm seeing Carrot Corner in a way I never did before, in the sense that like I've got this ambition now, this like driving passion to like make a training site that's actually really, really high quality, that's really structured, that has like the series that the customers need to get better. Like we have one called Aggress to Impress, like all the aggression that newer players just don't find that causes them to get stuck at lower stakes. We have a series from Sebastian called Road to Pro. So you're already quite good, but you want to turn professional and take your game to the next level. These are the things you should probably work on mentally and technically. We have a series called Reg Wars, where cruisers just like high level reg versus high level reg solver breakdown, bunch of hands, fascinating spot, all the stuff that people want, right? So I saw a comment the other day on YouTube, on a YouTube video, that was like, why would anyone pay for subscriptions these days when there's all this free content on YouTube? And the answer is because we are driving it up a notch with subscriptions, and we're making it really orderly. And it's like the same reason you pay for a course, right? You're getting that same organization. So that's where we are with subs. Hopefully I am anxious about it. My tech guy's not very well at the moment, had to take a bit of time off, which has like held us back a little bit. We've got just a few niggling things happening with the website. It's not the best back-end website that we have, so at times like it's a bit, you know, volatile, and one thing breaks another thing and stuff like that. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit anxious, but life is kind of going quite well at the moment, touch wood. There's a few things going on that I'm quite happy about, and it is only work at the end of the day. And I'm sure if we do launch and there's some issues, we can get them fixed. And I think one of the biggest battles for me, Melissa, is just like trying to appease the CEO version of me, who is very, very conscientious to a point of stressing out a lot. And if you ask my assistant, who's like the opposite, she's like quite blasé and quite like, you know, she does work hard, but she does it in bursts, and she's not like massively organized like I am, where everything has to be done at like X point in time. And we have like quite a interesting dynamic because of our conflicting styles of the way we actually work. But you asked her, she'd probably say like, oh, Pete Clark is he's massively motivated by money, and he's like extremely I don't know, anal about when things are done and how they're done and all of that. And that's not me generally, but it is me. Like the CEO part of my personality spectrum is very much like that, where I stress about things, I want them done to like exactly this standard at exactly this time. And I've become more and more like that throughout the subscription process, because I think it's required of a successful company that you have a CEO who's actually like that. But then it's about learning to switch that off. And when I wake up in the morning, not just going, oh shit, there's this thing that hasn't been done yet that should have been done, or oh no, there's this thing. And there's a fine line between conscientiousness and, I guess, neuroticism. And it's about trying to walk that tightrope and not fall into the pits of neuroticism where you freak out. And it's a habit, right? Like scrolling, doom scrolling for 6 hours is a habit that you ingrain. Being neurotic and being kind of like OCD is also a habit you ingrain. So it's like trying to walk that balance and just make sure that you don't fall into the pits of hell, as Peterson might say, right? You don't want to go there, but you still need to stay super conscientious. So I guess one of my main struggles at the moment is just keeping that beast under lock and key enough to be able to do what I need to do, but without work stressing me out like too much. And I think as Carrot Corner grows, it's going to become more and more like that, where I'm outsourcing more stuff, hopefully, and I need to do a good job of that and make sure that the coaches and editors and everyone that's involved is doing a good job. And if that's all running like a well-oiled machine, I'll be okay. But when, we have like hiccups or others can't do their job for whatever reason or whatever, I think that's when I feel like the weight of the world fall upon me. So, people see the content side. They see the YouTube guy, the guy that's like, true EV. And they're like, oh, this guy's just a joker that sits there like, shilling courses and making jokes and shit like that. And it's like, yeah, that's the front of house. That's the shop window that you see there. But like behind the scenes, it's a company to run, and it's growing, and it's only going to grow more and more because I'm really ambitious, and I'm not just going to settle for having a successful training site that sells courses or a small training site. I want Carrot Corner to be like a majorly successful enterprise in the next 5 years, and then I want to be able to like retire, get others to run it, step back, and never have to worry about money ever again in my life. And that's my goal. And to do that, you've got to be like pretty driven and pretty conscientious, and I've had to really up my game in that respect. But it is kind of hard to switch off from work sometimes, and I think that's the kind of the battle I'm fighting at the moment. But yeah, mostly positive, mostly super excited about it.
Well, I'll tell you from my perspective, I'm not on the inside, so I just like have a lot of like I'm looking in on the shop from like the street corner, right? And like, because I see your YouTube content come out once a week, and obviously like in the Discord, the discussions you've had about the new service and everything. But anyways, from my perspective, it seems very obvious that the Carrot Corner site business is getting bigger, and it's at this, you're bringing on all these other coaches, all these different people. It's been really cool to meet these new coaches. The videos that have been on YouTube have been great, fascinating, because it's like bringing in people who aren't in the Carrot Corner, like they're not senseis. So like it's like how they think about poker is like really fresh and new, and it's kind of cool. It's just like it's like a really new thing.
Yeah.
And
so real quick on that, just to clarify what that means for people.
Yeah.
We have two types of pro that are going to be working at Carrot Corner. We have people from the outside, like Cruiser, that he did watch like my From the Ground Up course originally, and that's how he got into poker, which is kind of funny. It's just like a beginner course that I did for Run It Once.
That's nice.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
But he's not come up through the Carrot Poker School or through coaching with me or anything like that. He's just like made his own way in the game and studied independently with solvers, and then now he's making content. And then we have guys like Alex and Sebastian who are like high stakes crushers, but they're Alex's Carrot Poker School taught originally, but then he's also done a lot of work on his own. So like not all of his thoughts are exactly CPS. And then Sebastian is like I don't think he did Carrot Poker School. He just came up on his own and with another coach and stuff like that. And then we have guys that have organically just always been taught via only really CPS and then like coaching through me, like Akshar or James, or I know they do some other work like in groups and stuff like that as well these days, but originally they're like fully Carrot Poker School, came up through the Discord. Guys like Ed, who's like absolutely crushing the game now, who's like full Carrot Poker School, like sensei. So we have senseis who have like posted on the forums in the Discord and always given people advice and have been a bit more Carrot Poker School molded, so their thoughts sound a bit more like the CPS. And then you have guys that come from outside that are fresh and they've maybe become senseis now, guys that give advice on the Discord that have blue names, but they haven't come up through that path. So yeah, that's an awesome point. I just wanted to clarify what that all means
Yeah.
for people. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's I don't realize that that's doesn't just people just don't just know that. So so but anyways, that's been cool. And I also think that it feels like your ambition is apparent and really cool to be to be witness to. So it feels like that point when a business that's like a really successful, you know, in one location decides to like expand into another location and has to like lease out a whole big space and has to like hire more employees and do all the stuff and puts a lot of money out there and suddenly is like, you know, money that wasn't at risk before is suddenly at risk.
Mhm.
But it's like it's kind of those points where like any company that is big has that story, has that point in their narrative where they made that leap. So for me, getting back to our theme of like being ambitious in this episode, it's cool because I can relate to it, and I think it's one of the reasons why I enjoy this podcast so much, and one of the reasons I think, you know, we get along so well together and that this works is because we both are ambitious. And so I recognize that trait in you, and I completely get what you're saying about, you know, feeling like there's this battle in you between, you know, the conscientious like person and then the practical, you know, person who's not like, you know, staying up all night and, you know, you're not like a complete mess, but you always feel like that person is like is there.
Mhm.
And I can, you know, just to be frank, like I can only imagine the pressure, like because you are not only do you have the business itself, but you have this public facing persona, the true EV guy, and you have, you know, all this content out there. So your audience is large, it's international, and you know, you want it to go well. And so yeah, I have a lot of respect for it. And yeah, I'm really hoping, I'm excited. I know it's gonna go well, but yeah, I'm hoping that you don't go crazy or something in the process.
Yeah, no. I
So
mean, when the CPS first launched Carrot Poker School, I'd done such a bad job. I was so unconscientious then in so many ways that it was an absolute mess, and I was like stressed out of my head, and my assistant had to stay up all night like ironing things out and stuff like that. And it was like really dumb looking back at how badly I managed it. I do think with subs, I've learned from that and I've grown from it and I've managed it so much better. And so many of the moving parts are just already in place, and like everything, like the car's kind of built, and we're just like fine tuning it and making sure it passes the MOT now for launch. So it should be okay. Touch wood. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, on the public facing thing, that's hard as well, you know, like just
yeah.
while we're at the Poker Distilled kind of therapy session here, like that's hard because there's loads of different people in the poker world. There's a few factions, right? There's like the recreational player who might come across my content and be like, oh, this guy's weird, I don't really get what he's talking about, like this isn't for me. And then there's like the aspiring player who's really like the target audience and is like the heart and soul of Carrot Corner and makes Carrot Corner
Mhm.
possible, who's like the person that poker isn't yet their really successful job or anything, but they are really motivated and they want to improve and they want to invest in their own poker future. That's the person that we're really appealing to. And then there's like the sort of, I want to say, more grinder based, like EV driven, like super serious, like online poker nerd. And I think there's like some people in that space that are a bit like jaded and kind of bitter. And those people kind of see me as like an unserious clown who doesn't play the game himself like anywhere near full time, that barely puts in volume. And then that's like a huge issue for them. And it's like, yeah, there's just all these different parts of the audience. It's not just one audience, it's like all these different like layers of it. And it's like being portrayed or cast in a completely different light by these different factions of the poker world. You know, I've had people like Berkey be like, "Oh yeah, this guy's cool. Look at his content," and like they've, you know, in fairness to like Solve for Why, I think they've done a really cool job of like, you know, having some of my stuff on from time to time and being like, oh yeah, there was this Pete Clark tweet or like video where it said this or whatever, and that's been awesome, like that kind of exposure. And there's been other people like, you know, through the years, like Luke Johnson and Bennett Badby, and obviously Run It Once, and like companies and people who have wanted to work with me, and that's been super encouraging as well. But then there's like hate as well. Like as you grow, you just come across places on the internet or like comments or stuff like that, like some stupid Reddit thread or whatever, where people are like, "This guy's a joke, he's a scammer." And then there's like loads of people upvoting that, and you're like, wow, there's this like community of people that actually think that Carrot Corner, which in my mind is this like massively serious academic like poker training content, that like we're sourcing all these really great winning professional poker players. I've put so much time and effort into the Carrot Poker School. I see it as like this massively serious thing. And then it's like, oh, this guy's just up to some like massive like gimmick, like some massive like shilling scam. And it's like, it's just insane to like see that you can be perceived so wildly differently by so many factions out there. And I know that like the core Carrot Corner populace and the majority are like overwhelmingly like loving what we're doing at the moment. I know that. But even though I know that, if I'm in a bad frame of mind, I'm having a bad day, and I read a couple of nasty comments or something, that can fuck you up, man. You've got to be so careful with that as well. So one thing I've learned as we've grown, and we're not huge by any means. I'm not sitting here going, we're like Run It Once or Upswing around. We're not. We're not at all. We're just at the beginning. We're just like at the path where we can see we're standing at the edge of the woods and we can see this like labyrinth of trees and exciting prospects to explore, and we're just like headed down that path, and it's a great place to be. But we're not huge yet, but we are way bigger than we were before. Videos are getting 9K views, 8K views on average, as opposed to 2K views like a year and a half ago or something like that. So with that comes eyeballs, and with eyeballs just comes this weird mutation of your own self-image, where like, because you're reaching so many more people, you're exposed to way more different varied opinions about you, and you just begin to like, you can so easily fall off the precipice of like, the way they see me is now in some sense me. And I think that's like so dangerous, because like when it's positive, it can fuel your ego in a way where you're like, man, I must be amazing. Like I must be like invincible. I can't put a foot wrong. I must be like the best. And that's not true. There's so much shit I do wrong in poker, in business, in teaching sometimes as well. I think teaching's like my strongest suit, but I do think there's still stuff I do wrong there. And like the more praise and likes and stuff like that and adoration you get from people, the more you can be like, I must just be a boss, right? And I've had criticism before where it's like, oh, this guy doesn't think he can go wrong. He thinks he's amazing. He's not, blah, blah, blah. And there's probably some truth in that, where like, yeah, you can become like too self-assured to the point where you're not self-critical enough. Definitely. But at the same time, if you let the negative comments get to you, then you can just start to feel like some kind of like loser, which is absurd, because like clearly like I've achieved everything I've wanted to achieve. I've succeeded in everything I've tried to do so far in Carrot Corner, yet having a bad day and reading the wrong couple of comments or stumbling upon the wrong like post on the internet can make you feel like a right shit. And that sucks, man. It sucks that there's people out there, and it's not all trolls. A lot of that's better jaded people looking to attack someone, but it's not all. Some of those people, as has been pointed out as well, it's not the case that they're all just like these toxic troll demons. Like some of them just legitimately don't like what you do, and maybe they have there's some kind of truth to some of their criticism, right? So they might say, in this video, what he did here wasn't great, and I might look back on that and be like, yeah, I could have actually really improved that. Like that part of the video wasn't great, and like because there is sometimes truth in it, and it is sometimes like reasonable people making the criticism, that almost feels real. Whereas when it's some guy going, lol, 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 guy is bad, he's just a complete sham, but that's just too ridiculous to be true. But like sometimes, taking criticism as you grow, it's not easy. Anyway, sorry, I'm like rambling here, but this has always been a great space for me to be like real 100%. And so I think I just wanted to do that there. That's the kind of, that's where I'm at Carrot Corner wise at the moment.
Yeah. I wish I had an easy solution. I just don't. And I feel like like you said, as you get more eyeballs and you grow, it's just going to bring this on. And I mean, all I can say is that, like I've through Carrot Corner met like the most serious, dedicated poker players, like people I never thought I'd ever meet. And it's just like so many people that take it so seriously and care so much and want to get better and are dedicated to the game in a way that like even is more than I am in a lot of ways sometimes. And that's a really cool thing to be around. And so um I wouldn't change it for the world, but I can understand what you're saying. I think it's difficult.
Yep. Okay, let's
Um
pivot into
yeah,
some of your heads up
heads up
stuff. It's been a
adventures.
huge part of your passion for
Yeah.
poker recently, and you've been battling with a guy called Justin,
Yeah.
who's one of our senseis, and also the other Justin, who's Lu, who is not just one of our senseis, but also one of our coaches, who will be dropping in probably May at some point. So just very quickly, the way subscriptions are working is we're going to launch with 10 episodes of True EV. That's my series on like finding the right play at the right time and real life factors. And then there'll be 3 coaches with 3 videos each launching as well. So that's Sebastian, Alex, and I think James. After that, what will happen is that each week 3 videos will come out and a coach will drop with their first 3 videos. So the coaches are going to like splat down onto Carrot Corner week after week in May and June. So I'm really excited about that. So you'll be meeting them. We'll do like a coach spotlight reveal type thing, an interview, that kind of thing on YouTube and launch the content that way. But JLu, the kid, the Wonder Kid, one of the
The Wonder
people you've
Kid,
been
yeah.
battling. What's it been like battling like a guy that's like a so JLu's like an Oxford, kind of elite academic student, but he's
Yeah.
also a chess, oh, near enough a chess master, like not quite, but like got there in 2 years, and obviously like a sick poker talent as well, and a good articulator. His videos are really impressive. What's it
Yeah.
been like playing heads up against someone that is like just so much better at poker than like anyone you'll really meet in like the live poker scene on a
Right.
daily basis, right? What's that
Oh
been like?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been amazing. It's been great. It's been at times maddening, at times incredibly satisfying. Um the whole range of emotions really. I mean, I've played with him a lot more than I played with Justin. Um so Jaylu and I don't know how many hands we've played, but we've played long sessions. I think we played for like 5 or 6 hours one day. But heads up is what's interesting about it is that in a lot of ways it's like a microcosm of a normal session, and it boils down all of the all the emotions, roller coaster, whatever that you go through in a normal session, all the decisions you have to make. It concentrates that in like a series of like 50 hands or something. Like it just like boils it down, and then you're on to something else. So really a lot of our sessions have been um one of us is up for a while, then the other one's up, and then the other one's up, and then usually me makes a series of terrible mistakes and it's over. And it's over not because Jay Lou's like, okay, see ya. It's because I'm like, all right, I'm done. and
Are you playing
and
for
then
money? Like, are you playing for some stakes attached?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We've been playing 25 cent, 50 cent.
Hmm. So that
And
can get
so
expensive.
it can get expensive, yeah. But I will say, in fairness to me, I think that I've adapted and gotten better. And also we've done some studying. We've looked at some solvers together. Some certain spots. Like one of the spots we looked at was um when so obviously like small blind would raise, big blind calls, and then it's at like a low board that's like somewhat disconnected, and it goes check check. Uh, if it the solver like basically looking at like how often it overbets after it goes check check, and it's like a lot, and it overbets for a lot. So you're in this world where it's kind of like a funhouse mirror where like you the theory is different, and that's kind of exciting too. And to be honest with you, I mean, like from what I've talked with Jay Lou about, like he doesn't know the theory as well as he knows it in like a six max, right?
Yep.
And neither do I. So in that way, we're kind of it's a little bit of a more even playing field.
Hmm.
So what we're a lot of it is like I think both of us picking spots to aggress um and then also, make some hero calls. My sessions with Justin were a little bit they were a while ago, and um I was a lot newer to heads up then, and I'm not sure how much Justin plays heads up, but it was a little bit less, it's a little more wild and not as structured. Like Jay Lou and I have really grinded for a while, and I think we've both gotten better at heads up. Um, and the nice thing about it is that I went and played heads up live. There was a heads up tournament locally, and it was like a 1K tournament, and it was capped at 34 entries. So it was kind of modeled after the World Series has a heads up event, but it's 25K, and I think it's capped at 64 players. But it was kind of modeled after that in terms of how it was structured. So, and that was like I just had much more experience than anyone else in that field for the most part playing heads up solely. So like I had such an edge in that tournament, and I should have won it. I made one mistake in the semifinal that I shouldn't have made. It was a call on the river that I shouldn't have made, which ended up costing me, and I ended up losing because of that. But that was a tournament I should have won. Anyways, it was really helpful to have all of the experience playing with J. Lou and Justin. So, um, if they're listening, I will say how much I appreciate appreciate the opportunity to play with them. I can't imagine any other situation where I'd get to play with like players of their caliber, in that for those stakes. And also like I know Justin plays bigger, but also just to like have that time and that instruction, it's been really cool. And um I really appreciate it. And Jay Lou and I are still playing. Like we he he and I are like we'll just like pay out every month, like whatever the balance is.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been playing like we haven't played yet in April, but I think we play about maybe 2 or 3 times a month. So
Are you on like a call while you're playing, or do you go on the call
no,
afterwards?
we usually do a call after. Um
Mm-hmm.
I I'm allowed 10 minutes to decompress and get off tilt. No, I'm kidding.
Mm-hmm.
But we usually end, and then like we just had a call for a while, and then talked about over some hands. And I just like heads up so much. I would say it's my favorite. I like it more than I like tournaments. It's my favorite kind of style of play other than
Yeah,
full ring.
yeah. Heads up is great. I think the problem with it in today's online climate is it's not really anywhere to play it, right?
No,
It just doesn't
there's
really
not.
exist anymore. That's partially
No.
because of worries about RTA and how easy it is to solve heads up like completely
Yeah.
and utterly.
Yeah.
And it's also just like sites. I guess it doesn't like it's not a good thing for the site to just have like a bunch of like grinders battling each other heads up or whatever. It's not gonna be the most profitable thing. So I guess it's annoying in that it's such an amazingly pure form of the
It's so
game,
pure.
but
It's so
technology
pure.
in the
Yeah.
modern poker world has kind of
Yeah.
ruined it, like in terms of its practical
Yeah.
application. I think the
And
way to
what
play,
was
yeah.
yeah.
I was just gonna
I
say,
was just gonna say, you reminded me of this, and I just want
mhm,
to mention real quick.
mhm,
When you say it's like so pure,
mhm,
honestly, the heads up tournament was like a chess tournament
yeah,
because you sit down, you play one, you shake hands, and then you play one on one, and
mhm,
then when it's over, you get up and you shake hands again. And like if then you go to the next one, like you just like walk down the
awesome.
row, and like I was like, this is so awesome. Like this is
Mhm,
so pure. And that's yeah. So that you just reminded me of that when you
yeah,
said it.
there's something about chess tournaments where because you shake hands, like when the guy comes to the board or whatever, and then afterwards as well, it just feels like it's a real event, like it's a real battle, but it's like a professional battle. But yeah,
Yes,
just going
absolutely.
back to this heads up stuff that you've been doing with JLo and Justin, it's I don't know if the viewers quite even gonna grasp just what an opportunity that is. Like maybe they will, maybe a lot of them will, but you guys out there, just imagine being able as a aspiring poker player to battle like thousands of hands against like a really good professional poker player heads up and then talk about it after. Like what an amazing fucking opportunity. Like that is
I know.
beyond the pale in terms of like what people normally expect out of their poker learning, and because of your ambition and your kind of like want for that tough experience, you've just subjected yourself. It's an absolute baptism of fire. It's enough to like put anyone off the game. I remember like doing this myself back in like 2008 or something when I was first starting out, and some of the better players on Flop Turn River would play heads up, and they'd offer to play me at like 100 NL or whatever, 50 NL, whatever it was. And like they were just like so good compared to anyone I'd played against, like at the stakes I was playing at the time, that was just immense for my game. Like I have no doubt that was like amazing, and
Yeah.
it will help your six max and full ring games
Oh,
as well enormously.
absolutely. And I'm so much more comfortable in heads up spots in a full ring game. I just feel like I'm so in control of the hand. And what heads up allows you to do is it allows you to identify um, boards and spots where ace high is good, or maybe even king high is good.
Hmm.
And you're basically you're thinking about the game in a much more you're thinking about you have, because the base ranges are so wide, it forces you uh to deal with that, and it forces you to your brain to kind of come to terms with that enormous vast like range.
Hmm.
but it becomes, it condenses obviously quite quickly. So
Hmm.
it starts off like this, and then it's like
Mm.
choof. And
Yeah.
so you're just like sucked into this world, and it's like, okay, we're in this range, like we're in this part of the range, we're here, and the board's 6-7, deuce, and there's like a 2x over bet, and you're just like, okay, like this is where this is where we're at right now. And it's not necessarily just over pairs we're dealing with. And so it's like this like I said, like it just boils it down and it shoves you into these spaces. So then when you go back to full ring, and you're a big blind versus button, or that's like so easy,
So
right? I
easy.
mean, it's just like not the same. I mean, you're starting with a wide base range, but it's still not even anything as wide as what you're dealing with in heads up spot. So you're
Hmm.
so much more comfortable in like negotiating, okay, like this is what I can do with ace high here. This is like theoretically where I can be, and exploitatively it's like sky's the limit. And so that's that's what heads up does to your game. At least that's what it did to my game. So
Yeah, it's like if you can survive mentally as well in the
yeah.
climate of heads up against a player that's better than you, and you can do that for like loads and loads of hands, you can handle almost anything, because there's very little in poker that's
Yeah.
as difficult to process as like getting beaten up adversarially heads up. And I'm sure like as you play more and more against guys like JLu, like your loss rate's gonna come down and down and down, right? And like his
Yeah.
win rate's gonna come
Yeah.
down and down as you get better. And that
Yeah.
progress is like amazing. But just the mentality of it, just like the whole, if you have done that, there's not much that like you can't handle. I'm imagining like as if there's like a combat trained army guy or girl or
Mhm.
whatever that's like super versed in combat and has like been in like life or death stressful situations, and then like some guy, drunk guy, starts shit at a bar, and it's just like,
Mm.
this isn't even a thing. This is just like, fucking deal with this with my eyes
Yeah.
shut. It's like my pulse might go
Yeah.
up very slightly. It's like not even
Yes.
a thing for those people.
Yes.
And that must be
Yeah.
nice, right? To be in that crisis situation and combat situation and not even be like that bothered, just be like slightly, you know, um, you just have to like up your game a little bit to deal with it. But
Yeah.
what you've done with the heads up exposure there, I feel like you can be in so many live poker full ring situations that would have stressed you out a year ago, and you can just be like, this is nothing to me. Like this doesn't mean anything. Like
Absolutely.
I've been 14 stacks down in a
Yeah.
session while tilting against a stronger player, and I've fought through it. I can
Right.
survive anything. And I think that's
Yeah.
why, just to finalize here with like another one of our, anti-hedonic kind of rants a little bit here. If you don't accept that kind of strife and you're not willing to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, like good luck. Good luck, man.
Yeah.
You're not going to
Yeah.
deal with life very well if you're just like, oh, I'm going to just avoid all of the discomfort and I'm only going to play poker when I'm playing well and doing well and feeling strong mentally. You're just going to be a glass cannon. And I've been there myself. Being a glass cannon is not good. It's not good in business. It's not good
Yeah.
in poker. You've got to have a gear that you're willing to go into where you're like, for now I will suffer, and then like the future me is going to be like, it's armor. And this like analogy that I got from the Modern Wisdom podcast. I don't know if you listened to that, but it's this
No.
really cool podcast. The guy, Chris Williamson, is that his name? I don't quite remember, but he has like a load of interesting guests on from all kinds of walks of life. and and I can't quite remember which show it was or who he had on, but he was talking about this concept of like personal armor, and like if you look after yourself in the right way, say you like work out and you sleep well and you eat well and you don't drink too much and you don't like take drugs and you don't smoke and you have healthy relationships and you have a good relationship with your spouse, friends, children, whatever it may be, and you have self-worth, but you're altruistic as well, and you make sure that you do things for others and for the greater community, and you're embedded in the community and you're just functional. That's armor. That's like a massive giant suit of plate mail, right? And then when life comes at you with its inevitable adversities, which it's going to throw monsters at you, right? It's going to be like, oh, hey, Pete, your website's broken on launch day or whatever it may be. It's going to do things like that. And it's like, that's going to suck. And it's not going to be pleasant. And you're going to run really bad in that session or for that month or for that year if you're a live player. Maybe you have a terrible 6-month stretch or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But if your armor's good, it will not be a patch compared to like what it would be if you have no armor. So like if you go through life not taking care of yourself, having unhealthy relationships, not getting your mental issues dealt with a therapist, not working through anything, repressing stuff, living in anxiety and fear and just seeking comfort and short-term gratification all the time, you're basically wearing like the scraggly cloth armor that you start with at the beginning of an RPG. It's like old filthy vest, right? You start off in an RPG, you press I, you go to your inventory, and it's like disgusting, horrible brown vest. Armor 1. And then like later on in the game you have like armor 490 because you have like adamantite plate mail and it's glistening crystal gargoyle plate or whatever the hell the best armor in the game is, right? And it's like, okay, well, how do I get the crystal gargoyle plate in real life? Oh yeah, that's right. The way I've been this week has only given me like leather armor. So like life threw something at me and it smacked me and I couldn't cope with it because my armor was terrible. So yeah, like absolutely stand up straight with your shoulders back and all of that shit. Absolutely. Because that's armor as well. Another like source of armor is your outlook into the world. So I think like for too many poker players, they're fair weather poker players and they want to get through poker with their cloth armor. And when life is throwing nothing but rainbows and butterflies at them, that's fine. But then as soon as it turns, they're just not equipped. They're like, I'm out. I'm done. I'm checking out of here. And the thing I admire the most about you, Melissa, in terms of your poker career, is this like grit and this steely determination and this idea that like you're going to expose yourself to like the worst of the worst mental game challenges and you're going to survive them. And then you're going to have like 395 armor rating at the end of the day. And then the next time life does something to you, you're just like, fuck that. I was 14 buy-ins down heads up and I was tilting myself to death, and I'm just not phased by this like 2 buy-in losing session or this annoying one-outer.
J. Lou just like doesn't let up either, which is like great.
Yeah,
you're just like another overbet. Oh my god. Or it's like another like river shove, like, and it's just like there's just constantly those just putting the pressure on again and again and again. But I don't know, I fight back. The funny thing about that though armor story though is that like it was like my first or second time playing 510 at Bellagio. This was like a couple months ago, and I had like the biggest losing session ever. Like I've never lost that much money playing, and part of it was like bad play, part of it was just I ran bad, part of it was I don't know. It was a weird session. I sat across the table from Brad Owens. That's strange. But it was I walked back. I remember walking back to my room being like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And like that was a really cool feeling because I had gotten to this point where I'd like been dragged deeper than I'd ever been dragged down. And I was like, I'm fine. Like it was late, but it was like there's a few people out on the street, and, you know, you have all the lights on the strip and all of that, but it felt oddly peaceful and like just kind of like I had reached this like new land, this new level or something, and I was okay. And like I went back and I slept fine, and like in the morning I woke up and like had breakfast and just like went back and like I played at a different place, but it was like it was fine. And ever since then I've been, not ever since then, but part of that is like, oh, I can lose that amount and
Hmm.
like be okay. Like it's not something to be scared of. It's not something that's going to be like this cataclysmic event. It was just a odd session and it went wrong in a lot of ways. And there was a lot that I can learn from it. Like every session that goes bad, like I mean, every session I can learn from,
Hmm.
but um, yeah. So it was kind of just kind of in the same vein as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, helpful. So
Yeah, that's amazing. I think there's just so much like material here for people listening. Like your poker career is something that is like you are the protagonist of your poker career. So like how strong you are and what your attribute stats are and what your armor is and all of that RPG analysis, that like metaphor stuff, it really, really matters. And if you look at yourself now and you look at yourself 5 years ago and you're just the same, that's probably not good in any walk of life, unless you've just already nailed everything and you're really happy. But if you've had all of the same weaknesses and problems and frailties for like the last 5 years, probably something about your approach needs to change, to put it
yeah,
brutally. There's probably something you
yeah.
need to do differently. Maybe you need to get therapy. Maybe you need to get like a. I've got a guy I'm talking to this morning, Melissa, who's a friend of mine, but he's also my business consultant and my strategist. So when we
Oh, nice.
talk, sometimes it's just, here's my schedule for next week. I don't fucking know what's going on with it. Help me organize my brain.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's like, I
yeah.
don't know what content to put out in the next 2 weeks. And he might not like, he's not going to go, okay, Pete, this is the content you're going to put out. He's like a soundboard slash ideas partner slash just someone to interact with, because humans just work better when you're interacting, right? Than when you're just sat on your own. We're just more productive that way. You said it yourself. We ramble in Poker Distilled until we hit a point where we've like
Mm-hmm.
nailed what we wanted to say, and then we move on.
Mm-hmm.
But we do that collaboratively. We do that together. And it's the same with the guy I work with on Tuesday mornings, because like I'll just be like, well, this is what's going on at work. He knows the business intimately. He knows everything about it. And it's like, these are the things that are bothering me. You know, these people are saying this about me here or whatever, or this part of the business isn't working, or I don't know what to do with Thursday. I don't know. Like, what should I do with Thursday? Like, just that kind of thing. And it's so sanitizing, and just like, it makes me feel so much like decluttered. I feel so
Mm.
decluttered after that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I didn't have last year. But I came to a point where I was driving to the gym earlier in the year and I was like, I need a guy or girl to like actually just speak to once a
Yeah.
week about my business and declutter myself. I need business therapy. And so I got a business therapist slash strategist.
Nice.
And now I'm looking forward to it. The call is in like a couple hours. And it's like, okay, what frailties and weaknesses would I have had I not enlisted his help? Oh, I'd be disorganized. I'd be forgetting things. I wouldn't have a clear plan for marketing the lunch. I would be making a bunch of blunders that I'm not making. How much EV has that netted me? Who knows? But probably a decent amount, right? It's hard to say, but it's
Yeah.
probably just the act of, him being good at what he does and me having the foresight to like say, I'm shit at this. I'm shit at organization. This is a weakness. This is a chink in my armor. I need to address it, and being super like open about that. That was huge. Um,
Yeah.
Getting therapy in life as well was the same thing. It was like, oh, there's a bunch of problems like from my childhood holding me back. I know they're causing my brain to just be defunct, just be like suboptimal. I'm just not able to like be who I want to be. There's a block there. Okay, find the right therapist, bash away at it for a year. Different fucking human being today, like different human. Barely that guy from like a few years ago, barely recognizable.
Yeah.
Disgrace. Like, I don't want to say disgrace because it was still me, but like I look back on
Yeah.
that and I'm like, man, that was like running around a cave fighting rats with a copper sword,
Yeah.
and now it's like fucking fighting dragons in the sky, like in a fucking griffin or something. This is not
Fighting
comparable.
rats.
Yeah, like
Fighting rats.
that's the start of every
I can just
RPG, right?
imagine you're like, yeah. Um, that's good. I think that's progress and that's good. That's it. For me, that's kind of how I feel about my poker
Hmm.
career. I feel like compared to when I started, I was fighting rats. Most of them were my
My own
my
rat
own
demons.
mental rats. Oh my God. Have you ever do you know what is it called? A king rat or something? Where they all like this is a real thing. Rats, their tails will all get wrapped together and they'll form one giant
Oh my
thing.
god.
And yeah, isn't that
Like
terrifying?
a
Ah,
ball of
don't Google
rats.
it. Do not Google it. Do not Google it. It's
Yeah.
called, Yeah, do not. It's a real thing and it's a nightmare, total nightmare fuel. Um, but anyways, I feel like I look back at like where I started with poker and where I am now, and I'm I guess I'm very proud of myself and I'm very happy with where I am and the hard work that I can show for it. And I also have a graph that's pretty decent. I wish it was better, but it is what it is.
Is this like
And
a
I feel
live
like,
graph of like you compiling your results manually just for the audience?
yeah,
Right.
I just have a little app on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a live graph. And and I feel like where I was when I first came to you for coaching and like how frustrated I was with poker and how I was just like beating my head against the wall and I didn't understand why I was not able to kind of progress in any meaningful way. And anyways, I just feel like I don't recognize that player anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so that's been really cool. But I also feel like I still have so far to go.
Hmm.
And I also feel like I have, gosh, like I had a session tonight and it was like I just was like so many points where I'm just like, God, I haven't learned that yet. Like I haven't learned to fold there. Like I haven't learned to identify like just because someone is passive loose pre-flop doesn't mean they're passive. I mean, there doesn't mean they're going to be suddenly aggressive and bluffing on the turn and
Hmm.
river. Like a lot of times they're passive pre and passive post.
Hmm.
So any kind of aggression means, a strong hand. These kind of like basic exploits, right? And
Hmm.
it's like, in a 1-2 pool. And and so like I make these mistakes and I'm just like, I know nothing. Like I've just
Yeah, but
for,
it's not that you know nothing, it's that your brain is conditioning itself to fight like the end boss that is JLu heads up, right? Or like
yeah.
5'10" Reg at Bellagio, who's like
Right,
probably
right.
really good, like the guy in the
Yeah,
hoodie from
yeah,
like
yeah,
I don't know, the Euro guy in the hoodie is like fucking really good player at 5'10"
yeah,
Bellagio, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
and then you go back into 1-2, and although like passive Greg just doesn't bluff that spot. Greg's not fucking
yeah.
bluffing. Greg limps 8-4 suited and just check folds a 4 on the flop. Like, you probably know
Right,
that.
right.
But then in the heat of battle, there's 10 seconds to act, and your brain's like, oh, what are the protocols? What are the muscles I've been flexing the most recently? Like, what's the stuff I've been doing the reps on? Oh, yeah, it's like calling JLu down when he attacks me, and then like you just
Right,
calling the turn
right.
against Greg and then the river. And then it's not that you don't know that you should fold against Greg, it's just that the muscle that's been the most worked has kind of like, stepped in and been like, I'll handle this, bro. And it's like, no, you're
Right,
you're the
right,
wrong muscle for this job, right?
right.
So
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's so funny. And yeah, and I also feel like the other thing is like when I play well, I don't remember those hands at all. So like it's like, oh, check raise bluff, favorable world kind of thing, like or like, all of these kinds of points where like I feel like I play well and it and I just like forget about it. I'm just like, okay, that happened. Like
yep.
that was good. Like that's kind of how it's supposed to be. And then I just move on to the next thing. And then deviating in a way that, you know, I end up exploiting myself or I deviate too far or I'm just like, you know, just not where I'm supposed to be. And those I remember vividly. And so it's this weird imbalance
Mm,
in how I perceive my own game. And one of the things that you don't have the advantage of when you're a live player as opposed to online is that you don't have this huge database to kind of go through and like look at like every, you know, tiny granular part of your game. And so it's really just the game that exists in your memory.
yep.
And your memory is like notoriously wrong,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like you're your own worst witness. And so a lot of times like I'm thinking, oh, I could have done this differently. And then I think about it the next day and I'm like, well, maybe I couldn't have, or like maybe that was it's just like we've talked about this before, but it's kind of the hard part about live poker being in a lot of ways like in the Stone Age compared
Hmm.
to playing online in terms of what you can do with data.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. I think this has been really helpful. I do have some dogs that are needing to go
No, and
outside.
I
And
actually have to probably go to bed since it's late where I am.
sounds sensible. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 8:45 for me, 12:45 for
You're
you.
just starting your day and I'm ending
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I used to be on the other end of that, and I'd always be like, haha, you have to start your day. I'm at the end, and now I'm like, oh, you get to go to bed. God, this sucks. But yeah,
Haha, yeah.
this will be our slot though, right? When we start season 3 in July or whatever, this is gonna
Absolutely.
be our slot.
Yeah, this will be the new arrangement.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to season 3. I am excited to do it and looking forward to share it with everyone. Thanks again for listening, and I hope this drop is a nice appetizer before the main course.
Really fascinating topics today.
Yeah,
Awesome to catch up with you. I've not realized just quite the extent I've missed these weekly chats. It's super therapeutic to me as well. So I can't wait for season 3. Once
good.
Carrot Corners calm down, we'll
Yeah,
get that going from July onwards or something like that.
yeah,
Sounds good.
and good luck with everything on your end.
Yep, you as well. We'll
All
chat
right.
soon. And audience, don't forget to leave us some comments on YouTube, some comments in the Discord group, Poker Distilled channel, about what you thought of this episode. If you want to talk further, let's do it. And also, if you would rate us on Spotify, that is very much appreciated. We'll see you in a few months for season 3 of Poker Distilled. Until then, all the best of luck at the tables and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.
Bye.
I'm hushing the dog on the chain. I'm running up stones on the edge of the bank. Rally the troops for another refrain. I sing this softly to myself. I sing this softly to myself. I'm buried beneath the sand. There's no way to speak or reach out my hand. Watching the paper slowly unfold. Bracing for news that I can't bear to hold. While I'm singing this song to myself, I sing this softly to myself. Tore up my jeans on the fence. This iron road I cannot bend, but my walking is lighter when I walk with a friend. I sing this softly to myself. I sing this softly to myself. I'm waking up early again, sitting alone and listening in.